Well, welcome everybody to both sides of the mic. This is August 20th, 2023. I still have a hard time not saying 19, but 1923 is a little before my time. I guess if I live long enough, it'll catch up to me. I want to welcome Darren Gallina this week in the hot seat. His partner Tom, you see, is over there on the, well, he's in a different place on everybody's computer probably. Anyhow, so we're going to find out what makes Darren click or tick. I don't know if you do you click?
Uh, I don't know. If you can find out, that'd be great because there's a lot of people that have tried. So,
Lordy. Well, yeah, we'll get right into the square dance side. I was going over my notes a little bit, and it's amazing how many people started into square dancing because their folks were in it. So I'm going to let Darren tell us how he got started into square dancing. Not the calling, but the dancing.
okay. Um, well, like most people, my parents danced before I was born. They both grew up on the East Coast and met in college and drove across country. This was about 1957, I guess, and settled in a little town on I guess you'd call it Southern California, Oxnard, California. Joined a square dance club, the Romping Stompers. Um, they had me and moved to Lompoc, where I currently live. And then they had my sister 5 years later, and about must have been like the early 70s. They got back into square dancing at the local square dance club there in Lompoc, the Rocking Squares. And after they had graduated from the class, they took my sister and I must have been 12 at the time, maybe 13. I always like to preface these stories was saying, had I known I'd be doing this 45 years later, I would have kept better records of what happened when. But anyways, the highlights, anyways. So my sister and I went to the dance, and there were other kids there. We're like, hey, that looks kind of fun. I think we'd like to do that. So of course, September rolls around and the new square dance class starts in our town and with rocking squares. And they're like, no, we don't accept kids in our classes or at our dances. So we're like, oh, okay. So I guess, and that was kind of a blessing in disguise as the story goes on. So we had to drive to the next town over and go to a square dance class there in Santa Maria, California. It was this old army barracks building that was on the airport property, probably should have been condemned 5 years before I started dancing. But it was cool and it had a wood floor, and on the back wall they had black and white photos of a lot of the callers that had come through there, and I recognized Frank Lane's picture and Marshall Flippo's picture, and they had some of the local callers there, like the caller that taught me to dance. So every Thursday night we would drive to Santa Maria to go to the square dance class up there, and Daryl Hamilton and his wife Bonnie taught me and my sister how to square dance. Right, must have been 75, I guess. So, um, and Daryl is also the one that taught me how to call as well. So, um, I don't know if you want to get into that part yet, or if you have more questions about
No,
learning to square dance. So,
we'll hold that one back a little bit. How old was Daryl generally?
well, when you're 13, he was old.
Yeah.
I would say he must have been 30s, maybe
Wow,
40s.
that old, huh?
But yeah,
Wow.
So, and of course, Santa Maria has at that time had a couple of oil refineries, and I think they still do. It's not as it's not as big here as it used to be, but back then it was. And he worked in the oil fields. He was an oil field worker,
Hmm.
and was just he is a great example of just a local club caller. He was a very good caller, um, and didn't want to go any further than that, and was happy calling for the Squaws and Paws in Santa Maria, and calling once in a while at one of the other local clubs in the association, um, and going to just doing local stuff, and not necessarily branching out and going any further for calling outside the local Central Coast. So,
Yeah.
but I thought he was a good caller.
So let's go ahead then and go into the transition into being a caller.
Well, I was probably 13. No, I was probably 15 at the time. I was 13 when I started dancing. Um, and probably about age 14, 15, I really at that time liked the music. And I'm like, hey, it'd be kind of cool to be up there to like be the caller and to tell the people what to do. I was intrigued with the music right around that time. I mean, it was mid 70s. You had a lot of banjo and fiddle music, that country twang. I still like that country twang um, to this day. And I started talking about it, like, hey, I'd kind of be interested in learning how to call. And I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but that night I ended up going home with a record. At the time, it had probably just the song had probably just came out, and I really liked it. And it was Something About You, Baby, I Like, Chaparral 201 by Jerry Haig. And I took that record home. Probably looking back on that experience, it probably wasn't the best um, first song for somebody who's never sung before or had any singing experience. It's For me, it was a challenging song. It actually took me I, it took me 15 years to perfect that to where I was comfortable enough performing it out in public. Um, but the Daryl kind of gave me a name and address of where he buys his records from. It was a place out of Arizona, Master Record Service,
Oh yeah.
maybe,
Sounds
if you
yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
Mail
Right.
order master record service. But anyways, that goes back many years. But and so of course you go to the local dances and you hear the other local callers and what they're using in the music, and you're able to get the name and record number and all that information and then order. And I got some other records that were um probably, excuse me, a little easier to sing to and perfect a little quicker. So one of the songs I remember was Let Your Love Flow. It was on Square Tunes by Ted Fry. So, and I think he's like out of Tennessee, or was out of Tennessee somewhere. I never got to meet him, but I was always impressed with his vocal on that song and the other songs that he did. But that was one of the ones, I think one of the first singing calls I actually did um, in public. And from there, I called my first full dance by myself in September of 77. I was probably 15 at the time. Um, my parents, I was thinking about this yesterday. You know, my parents were very involved in my calling, and especially my mom, and she insisted that I like write out a playlist for every dance that I did. The pattern music I was going to use, the singing call I was going to use. Was I teaching anything? How was I going to teach it? And to this day, especially with like weekend festivals and conventions and stuff, I still write out a playlist, handwrite a playlist just to make sure that I've got all my ducks in order. But anyways, so um so they were very involved, and of course they had to drive me to my dances, and because I didn't have a driver's license at that time. So, and it was for a club in Santa Maria that eventually I became the club caller for, and it was a lot of fun. And I wish I had kept the playlist from that very first dance. That would have been really cool to see, like, what songs did I do way back then? But anyways, and then once people started hearing me, we at that time had a local festival here on the Central Coast called Square Fair, and it was over Labor Day weekend. And we'd get a it's one of those things where callers are invited to come and call and be put on the list, and those callers from the area around the state would then bring their dancers, and then all of a sudden you got a festival, and then you schedule all the callers to call and all of this. And so I started calling at Square Fair, and other clubs from other areas started hearing me, and next thing you know, I'm traveling a little bit down to Southern California and over to Bakersfield and up to Monterey and all that kind of stuff. So, um, and my parents, they they started seeing this and they're like, I never really talked to them about it, but I think they recognized that, hey, this kid's kind of got some talent. Because I noticed right after that, and I started getting booked for other clubs, my parents started taking us to weekend square dance festivals. And I remember one festival was down in Los Angeles, and it was a Chaparral weekend, Chaparral Records weekend. So Gary Shoemake and Ken Bauer and Burl Main and Jerry Haig were there, along with Wayne and Norma Wiley on the rounds. Um, and I'm like, ugh. And all of a sudden, I see like a different level of calling, and a different, a little bit different music too, because you're in this small area and you're just listening to local callers, and they're kind of all doing the same thing and similar records. And then all of a sudden, you go to a festival outside the area and you've got these national traveling callers at the time, and I'm like, I want to do what they do. And so my parents kind of made sure that I was around those kind of festivals, I think, and that type of music. I remember, and I've talked to Hunter Keller and Justin Russell about the same thing too, because we all kind of share the same experiences growing up as a caller, as a kid, and being treated as a kid and not as a colleague. Um, and callers talking to you like you're a kid and telling you what to do and the kind of music you should use. I had several local callers that were doing that didn't really care for the music that I was using at the time. Um, but and I was young. I was probably 16 at the time when um I dealt with like my first negative experience as trying to be a caller and going to this local festival that we had and having a caller there. It was a really weird situation. And I don't know if it was common at the time, but other callers would come in, and there were after parties at those festivals back then, where you did more dancing. Dancing's over at 11, and then you go right into an after party in one of the halls that may go to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And the after parties were held by one of the local clubs in the area, and they would charge to go to the after party. And that's how the club filled their coffers. And so the club caller at the time would then be the MC, and then the other callers would come in and they'd sign up to call, and they get put on the list, and then they'd run through the list of callers to call, and everybody'd have a good time. But this particular one, this was, I believe it was a Saturday night, and there was a group, just a couple of local, or not local, but a couple of out of town callers that decided that they were going to program the calling schedule for the after party. My club that I danced with in Santa Maria, Squaws and Paws, were putting that on, and my club caller Daryl Hamilton was going to be the MC. But I kind of got the feeling that there was a couple other callers in the background that were scheduling themselves and friends, and this was the list he was supposed to use. And anyways, I only heard bits and pieces of this, and Daryl told me to go see this other caller because they're making up the list of callers to call. So I went and saw that other caller, and they're like, "Nope, we're not putting you on the list. You're not a caller." And I'm like, "Wow." So that was like my first negative experience, really, as a person, let alone, my first experience in square dancing, and as a caller, as a negative response to me. Okay, yes, I wasn't like a club caller at that time, and I was still new and still learning. But it was that night that I decided I'm taking this serious. And um I told Daryl what happened. He's like, "Don't worry about it. I'll put you on the schedule." So he put me on the schedule, and I think I did a singing call. And I remember that singing call because it was rock. I'm just a redneck in a rock and roll bar, and the local callers had a fit that I did it, but the dancers loved it. So um, they didn't think it was an appropriate song for square dancing at the time, but I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was cool, and and I remember that night, after that night, talking to my parents about this experience I had, and I'm like, I want to do this seriously. I want to do this. This is what I want to do. I love it. So we got with Daryl, and at that time, in order to become a member of the local association, if you're a new caller, you have to apprentice under an association member and take a class through like a square dance class and teach people how to square dance. So that's what I did for, um, I guess, teaching cycle. And my responsibility was to teach one call each night. Daryl did the first, I don't know, 3 nights, three weeks, and then after that, he gave me an assignment to learn how to teach a call. I got, you know, probably you all still have it back in your storage shed or your garage, or maybe it's on your shelf. But the sets in order caller teacher manual that they had put out, and I used that to do my teaching on how to teach the movements. And I still, to this day, I will never forget the one call I just totally bombed on was Cloverleaf. I just blew the teach on that and did not hear the end of it from Daryl for a couple of weeks. I'm like, I can't do this again, man. But I've always remembered that, and so I always, that's like, that's a, and when you're 16, 17 years old and this is new to you, Cloverleaf is a difficult call to teach to begin with. But I've learned some tricks along the way, and it's my teaching has gotten a lot better. But Hunter and Justin and I kind of shared that thing where growing up, people not taking you seriously, and uh, I think getting kind of passed over for things. And I remember that learning to call, they in the local association, when the Valley Whirlers hired me as a 17-year-old kid to be their club caller, we had the biggest dances in the association on the second and fourth Saturday nights. Um, Tons of people came out, and of course, it's the novelty of having a teenage caller um, for your club caller. And when we went to visit other clubs, on anniversaries back then, they'd have anniversary dances, and the caller would come and bring his dancers. And as the callers come in the door, they get put on the caller sheet to call, and you call in the order that you show up, um, except for me. They always save me till the end. And of course, when you're 17 and you don't know the politics of square dancing very well, and that it kind of goes over your head, you get a little frustrated about why are they passing? I was here before he was. Why is Al Rue calling before me? And my parents had to sit me down and kind of explain that a little bit. It's like, look, the reason why they're not putting you on when you come in is because they want the dance. They know the dancers will stay until you call. Once you call, the dancers are going to leave. So they want to make sure that all the other callers have a good turnout for their tips. And I'm like, oh, all right. But and I won't lie. I mean, you're 17 years old, you got a decent singing voice, your club has the biggest attendance in the association, you're popular, there's an ego that goes along with that. And I know I had an ego. So, and as I got older, I'd like to believe that I lost that ego a little bit, and I work very hard now to just be very humble. I'm impressed that all these people are on. It's almost like this is your life, Darren. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. This,
but yeah, that's kind of the early years. And I have to say, in those formative years, um, Gary Shoemake, Ken Bauer, Wade Driver, um, and a little bit later on, Kip Garvey, all had a huge influence on my calling and how I called. And um, I really studied their styles to kind of take what worked for me from them to kind of build my calling style there. And I was 18 when I went to caller school. I'll tell this story, then I'll be quiet and you can ask a question, Joe. But I went to caller school when I was 18, and it was through Sets in Order. Back in the day, Sets in Order had a week-long square dance vacation at a place called Asilomar Conference Grounds in Monterey, California. It's the weirdest rustic place with no TV. They have no televisions in the room. There's like, you're just there for whatever conference you're there for. And so Bob Osgood, Bob and Becky put on this week-long square dance vacation, and along with it was a caller school. So the callers that were there, Lee Helsel ran the caller school. Hopefully, some of you recognize that name. These are the founding fathers of modern Western square dancing. So Lee Helsel was there. Bob Van Antwerp was on the program, and Bruce Johnson as well. But Lee Helsel mainly ran the school, and so I went to the school for a week, and then ended up calling a tip at the end of the week. So I felt very lucky to have gone to the scholar school, because, and what's really strange, it wasn't until a few years, maybe several years afterward, did I learn, because I mean, I knew who Bob Van Antwerp was, and I kind of knew who Bob Osgood was, but it wasn't until a few years down the road when I'm like, wow, did I have an opportunity there to learn from some of the greats in square dancing and square dance calling. And but it took me a few years. I mean, again, when you're young, you're not necessarily thinking about those types of things. But I look back on that experience and I'm like, wow, what a great opportunity I had. And I treasure, Bruce Johnson lived in Santa Barbara and there was a club in Santa Barbara and I got to work with him a lot. And that I always felt honored to share the stage with Bruce Johnson. He cued the rounds. And then as a singing, I remember I got ready to do a singing call and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, this song doesn't have a piano in it. Why am I hearing a piano? Well, in the cafeteria where we were dancing, there was a upright piano over in the corner, and there was Bruce pounding away on the piano, playing along with the song, the singing call that I was doing. And I'm like, wow, that's nice. That's nice. He was a great guy. I enjoyed working with him. Okay, I'm done.
Oh, well, that was good. You answered a lot of the questions I don't have to ask. But yeah, working with the old time greats, it's the activity is really very cyclical. It it goes around and around, and these guys were famous in their time. And when we look back, if you can watch any of the old videos or listen to the old audios, these guys were entertainers. At that point, we didn't worry about choreography that much. There's a lot more circles and stars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually we did get into this choreography kick. Sort of when I started, it was changing at that point, and now to me it looks like we're going back towards the entertainment part.
Right.
I like to think that we're much more forgiving and accepting of younger callers. For two reasons. One is it's the right thing to be, is accepting and helpful. The other is we need them to keep this activity going. So I see, most of the callers on here do work as mentors as well. You don't have to be a caller coach, a certified, accredited, licensed, and all that stuff that goes with it, to to make a difference in these people's career. I'm surprised that you stuck with it, with that kind of a attitude happening, because that does hurt to be left out. There's enough times when you get a clique of callers and they're going to hog the stage and hog the singing calls and hog the spotlight, and you go like, I'm just as good as they are, but it happens, and thankfully it made you work harder. Now I'm gonna switch
Yeah.
over to Darren's partner Tom, who has, oh yes, he has been so good at being quiet and not contradicting. What drew you to Darren? Was it his square dance skills and expertise, or did you meet him independently of that activity?
Well, so the first night I came, um, he came in and he goes, "You look familiar." I'm like, "I do?" Turns out, we were in a college course together. We took a horror fiction English course, but we hadn't met during that time. So, um, you know, it was a connection. We were dancing, and he was my instructor. I don't know how often that happens, but um, I enjoyed dancing, and with his singing and his instruction, and uh, that's how I got drawn into square dancing, and that's how I got drawn to Darren. So that's how we met.
Uh-huh.
So
Did he ever sing something about you, baby, I like?
yeah,
Yeah,
he did.
he didn't have to sing it for you, did he? You just knew.
No,
That's good. So, Darren, I understand, Darren, that you had a band. Is that
Yeah. So, the way back again, I was early 20s when I did my first live band dance. And a couple of dancers had asked, "Hey, have you ever called with like live music before?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." I'm like, that'd be kind of interesting to do. And at the time, this was probably mid 80s, I guess. And there was a square dancer in the local club in Lompoc who also played the fiddle. Um, and had a band and played the local Elks Club and all this kind of stuff. And so I got together with him and I'm like, hey, what do you think of this idea of like playing live music for a square dance? And you're like, I think we should do it. So that so we got together. I gave him a cassette tape, I believe, of a couple of singing calls, and we got together at his house for band practice and worked up enough songs for a dance and held a dance in Santa Maria with live music and was a sellout, complete sellout. The hall, in fact, we had to move in because we danced at the Santa Maria YMCA, and they had a hall that was, which is a whole nother story for another time as to how we got this. We basically raised the funds for this hall that was part of the Santa Maria YMCA, and that hall was a little smaller than the gym, which was across the hall. So we ended up having to do it in the gym because it held more, and we probably held, I don't know, at that time 20 squares maybe for the line. I mean, everybody came out for that. And so for the first couple of years we used his band or a variation of his band. And after about the second year, he was kind of an older gentleman and ready to retire and was going to move back to, he and his wife were going to move back to Louisiana. And so that left me without a band. So I had to kind of create my own. And he gave me the name of a local fiddle player who also had a band that also played the Elks clubs and um, various events around the Santa Barbara County. And so I called him. He's like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And he then turned me on to some of the other musicians in the local area. It's like, "Well, I need to build this band, and this is what I'm trying to do." And he's like, "Okay, well, here's a guy we could use to play guitar. Here's a guy we could use to play bass, and here's a guy that we could use to do the drums." I'm like, "Okay." So basically, I just built my own band um, uh, with referrals from the other fiddle player, John, and John and I played probably um and again was a huge success. And with this band, this my own band, I mentioned earlier about the festival, the local square dance festival, Square Affair, and I love this story. It's so great. So my club, I got together with my club and I was like, hey, let's do an after party at Square Affair and let's hire the band. And they're like, that's a great idea. And they had ribbons printed up. And I think, that was back in the day when there was like 1,000 people coming to 1,500 people coming to a weekend festival. And I think we we sold 500 ribbons to that after. That was like the hugest after party at this thing. And we paid the band. The band got paid for that. And the local association found out, and drama ensued. And they had the next monthly association meeting. It was discussed to hell and back about the fact that people that come, and to the callers and queuers that come to Square Affair come and they donate their time, and you paid the band to do this after party, and now we have callers telling us they're not coming back because the band got paid. And I'm like, okay, I know some callers. By this time I had made lots of friends as callers and dancers, and I'm like, I know some callers, we can bring them, they'll come. But there was a yeah we there was a lot of there was some upset people that we actually paid them, and I think we paid them at that time. I think they got paid $100 each. So that was what, $400, $500. I think they paid me too. It was $500. Probably in the 80s, that was probably a lot of money, I would think. So, but I remember everybody upset. And you know what? We did it the following year too. So, and we cooked the books so it wouldn't show that we paid the band, and just made it, and we swore it. There was only a small number of people that knew that the band got paid the second year. Oh, they came back and did it. They volunteered. That's all we said. And that was a great experience. And then the band kind of grew. And in the early 90s, I kind of stepped away from calling a little bit. And I put together a different band. It was still a country band. And about that time, it was the line dance craze was taken off. And so I put together a band of different musicians, still local, but available more frequently to go out and play like most of the weekends. And we did a lot of club dates up and down the Central Coast here for dance clubs. Not necessarily, and we did one square dance a year down in Los Angeles, for the Valley Trailers. And so that was probably, I don't know, 92 to 97. So about 5 years. And then kind of towards the end of that, I started honestly, I just got tired of dealing with five egos. I had everybody in the band had an ego, and everybody wanted to be the star. And I'm like, oh, I'm so tired of this. So when the gigs were starting to drop off, and I was doing all the work. I was doing the marketing, I was booking the gigs, I was getting musicians when my regular people couldn't play. And on one of those nights when I ended up using a drummer, Jeff Winter, from Los Angeles. And I don't remember what the first gig was that we used him on, but all of a sudden, after I decided to disband the local band I had, I still needed musicians because I had booked a couple of live band square dances out in the upcoming years. So I needed a band. So I called Jeff, and basically through Jeff, I built the band that I have today, Crossfire, the musicians that I use today. Um, and at that time, they were all I basically have a stable of musicians. So I have a couple of fiddle players and I have a couple of guitar players. I have Jeff that plays drums and a couple of bass players. And those guys were all touring musicians at the time. And so when they were on the road with somebody, I had to use someone else. And about 97, I started getting back into calling and calling more. Um, I was from 92 to 97, I was probably doing 2, 3 gigs a year, maybe square dance gigs a year. And then a couple of local callers would like, hey, will you fill in for me? Will you fill in for me? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll fill in for you. And next thing you know, I'm building up my square dance gigs. And I'm like, it's good to transition back into calling, I think. Then I only have to deal with my own ego. And so these guys in this band, they're just there to play, and they like doing the square dances because you don't have to work to get the people up like you do in a club environment where you got to play the right song to get the dancers up on the floor and dancing and keeping them there. No, at square dances, the band is there because the dancers want them and they want you playing. So it's plus there's food, and the musicians like that. They like the food. So um and so I've had a couple of people come through my band that have been, it's just been like a real honor to have them in my group. I mean, this is a little square dance band that's playing for a anniversary dance in LA, and the guy playing fiddle for me is Brantley Kearns, who toured with Dwight Yoakam and did the first couple albums. If you're into country music and you've heard the song Guitars, Cadillacs, Hillbilly Music, if you've heard that song, all that fiddle work on those first couple albums was Brantley. And to have him come out, yeah, do your square dance, and just a funny guy. And I remember we were doing a dance one time, and Jeff couldn't make it, my drummer, and he says, I got this guy, his name is George Green, and he'll do really good for you. I'm like, all right, the drummer's like important. So I get there, and he was sharply dressed and all set up and ready to go before we even got there. And I'm like, hey, George, I'm Darren. So I'm like, do you play full time? He's like, yeah, I work with Florence Henderson when she does her cabaret shows. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, what else do you do? And it's like, well, we have an entertainment management company. And I'm like, okay, well, we manage like actors and stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. So how many actors are you managing now? It's like, well, right now we just have one, and it's my son. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, everybody in LA's got a kid that's an actor, or they're an actor themselves. And I'm like, would I have seen him in anything? And he's like, um, right now he's working on the show 90210. And I'm thinking, running through my mind, who are the actors on this Beverly Hills 90210? I'm like, Brian Austin Green, is that your son? He's like, yeah, that's my son. I'm like, wow, okay. Well, that's kind of cool. And he was an excellent drummer, and I used him several times. Um, and later on, um, through my stable of musicians, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, I got I got a call from someone named Jason Alexander, and I answered the phone, and I let it go to voicemail because I didn't recognize the number. And he says, hi, my name's Jason Alexander. My wife's having a birthday party, and I got your name from Matt Carsonis, who a guitar player, um, toured a lot with Glenn Campbell. He referred me to you as a square dance caller. We're looking to have a square dance for my wife's birthday party. Call me back. And I'm like, that voice sounds awful familiar. To make a long story shorter, it's the Jason Alexander that was on Seinfeld. Um, that played George Costanza. We worked with him and his wife, and we did her birthday party, but dealt directly with them, not through uh, an assistant or an event planner. It was Jason and Dana that we spoke to on the phone about the details of this thing. Very nice couple. Those people were so cool. And it was a great party, and it was in downtown LA. Um, and then it was a couple of years ago. It was probably a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. Got a call from what's her husband's name? It's skipping. So this guy calls me and he's like, "Hey, my wife and I are having an anniversary party up in at a ranch kind of north of Santa Barbara. Actually, it was really close to where I live, which was nice. And when we got married, he we had a square dance caller come in, and we did square dancing at a rehearsal dinner. And this was in LA. And I'm like, oh, okay. It was like 35 years ago. I'm like, oh, hmm. So we talked about it. Come to find out, his wife um, is Julia Louis Dreyfus, who was Elaine on Seinfeld. And I remember when I'm like, yeah, we do a lot. We've done some private parties and, in for people in, and I mentioned Jason. He's like, oh, yeah. Well, it sounds like you're making the rounds through the Seinfeld cast because my wife is Julia Louis Dreyfus. I'm like, oh, okay. So we did a nice outdoor event for them for their anniversary. That was pretty cool. Brad Hall, that's his name. Brad Hall. He was on apparently he was on Saturday Night Live too. Um, so yeah, our brush with celebrity there with the band. The band's been really, really lucky to get to play some really cool gigs. So, and the musicians are great. They're just there to play. They're pros. So, but yeah. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet again.
So, so did the musicians play voluntarily for most of these gigs?
Oh no, I gotta pay them. They don't these musicians, um, yeah, they don't work for free.
Okay.
And so I gotta get a good rate for them. I do
Hmm.
my best to get a good rate for them. Um, but but they're very talented, and they know a lot of music and a lot of songs. For the square dance stuff, a lot of that the guitar player that I try to use on a regular basis, John McDuffie. He's really good at charting songs. He was the music director for Rita Coolidge, um, and so I had to fight a lot with Rita to get John to play because, oh, Rita's going to Japan. I can't make that gig. I'm like, crap. I'm like, all right. I remember we had a gig up in Northern California, and rather than flying John back home, I had to fly him to the East Coast because he was doing a week of gigs with her on the East. I'm like, oh, all right, so I got to pay a little more. But anyway, so I had to share him with Rita Coolidge. But he did it. He charts most of our singing calls and stuff for us. I just send him a copy of the called side of the record and said, hey, I want it. Can you chart this for me? It's like, yeah.
Hmm.
So but I pay for that too. It's about $50 a song to have him chart.
That's
So
pretty cheap. That's all
yeah,
right.
yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
So but it's basically a chord chart and a lead chart. That's
Yeah.
all nothing fancy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. He doesn't. He's not writing the original music, at least.
yeah.
Let's go to the poll. We have one polls of two truths and a lie, and again, I
Oh
didn't
boy.
put. Yeah, I didn't put it on the Zoom poll thing, so I'll read that for you, and we'll do the voting as shortly. Okay. First one. I got suspended from school for throwing a baseball through a classroom window. I can believe that. I taught. This is the second one. I taught a porn star to square dance. It's crazy enough. I think that could be true. And then the third one is I have a bachelor's degree in business administration. Um, and I'm going to say that's a lie, and I'll tell you why later. Um, so what we're looking for is the lie. So I've told you what my thought was um, on that, uh, but I don't want to taint it. Okay, so how many think the lie is that Darren got suspended from school for throwing a baseball through a classroom window? You can raise your hand or you click on the hand of the little things.
I
We
was
got
a crazy kid.
got kicked out of school. Okay. Well, we got only a couple there. Okay, that's a couple. I'll just write that down. Okay. How many think that it's a lie that he taught a porn star to square dance? Um, I can't imagine the. I can think of some of the patter fill-in, element left and right and left grope or whatever. Uh, I don't know. Sides, face. Oh no, let's not go there. Okay, so raise your hand if you think that one's the lie. He taught a porn star. Michael thinks it's a lie. Okay. Oh, and so does Hannah. She thinks that's a lie. You don't know Darren.
You would have been bragging on that one years before.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. He'd be in a whole different business, wouldn't he? Uh, and the third one would be how many think it's a lie that he has a bachelor's degree in business administration? Okay, raise your hand if you think that's a lie. Pamela thinks that's a lie, and I think it's a lie, and Carrie thinks it's a lie. Okay. Okay, let's go back then to oops. Oh, and Bill raised his hand on that one. Okay. So far um,
It's kind of a mixed bag.
it is.
And I have
It
to
could be
admit,
all.
it did take me a while to come up with this. I'm like, what am I going to use?
Yeah, yeah. Which one can I use safely? Okay. Well, why don't you tell us what the two truths are?
Okay. I Tom kind of gave this first one away because we had a college class together at Cal Poly University, and I do have a bachelor's degree in business administration from Cal Poly University. So that one's true. The other true statement is I did teach a porn star to square dance. And it's an interesting story because we were doing an icebreaker dance for the Gay Straight Alliance at Cal Poly. This has been several years ago. And I haven't really told this story before because it didn't dawn on me till like a year or so ago. Hey, wait a minute. I remember that guy. But anyways, so we were doing this icebreaker and we had started the dance and we were teaching people how to square dance. And this boy and girl came in. The guy was kind of tatted up a little bit. And I'm going, is he in the right place? He just doesn't look like he belongs here. And I'm going, So we took the break. We got up to dance again. He and the girl got up to dance. He danced the girl's part. See, you can't go on looks alone with people. This was a great example of that because I'm like, but anyways, so he got up to dance and he danced the girl's part, she danced the guy's part, and we learned to dance. Anyways, I got to talking with him, really nice guy. And then we did a conference at Cal Poly that the Gay Straight Alliance was putting on. They asked us to come in and do like an intro to square dancing thing at this conference. All these college kids were coming in from all over the state, and I'm going, really? And they put us in the big like main conference room with lots of chairs. And I remember I'm like, let's just move a couple of the chairs out of the way because there's so much going on where college kids are not going to want to square dance. That's not their thing. We ended up having to push all the chairs out of the way. The hall was packed. There was standing room only. The hall was, in fact, the news was there covering the conference, and they used us as a background when they did the interviews because there was so much going on in the room, so much dancing. But yeah, we basically filled that, and he was there, and we talked a little bit, and then afterwards, I don't know, it must have been a couple months after that, I asked one of the students that had asked us to come and do the intro things, and I'm like, whatever. And to be honest with you, I can't remember his name, his real name. If you want to look him up if you want to Google him, I remembered his porn name. His porn name is Hayden Russo, and there he goes. I see it, Michael. But anyways, so I'm like, whatever happened to so and so? And she's like, oh, I don't know if I can tell you this, but like, he's not at school anymore. He's like doing porn. I'm like, really? I'm like, wow, I taught a porn star how to square dance. So, but anyway, I see that smile.
Yeah.
Cool. But anyway, so the lie is, I've never thrown a rock through a window I've never gotten suspended. I couldn't get suspended from school because both my parents were educators and they worked for the local school district. So everybody knew who I was. So I had to like mind my P's and Q's. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, the reason I thought possibly the bachelor's, I thought you probably were sort of throwing us like a little roadblock that you actually had a master's in business had been okay. It's getting close to the end here, so Eileen does have a question. I'm going to let her ask her question in a moment after I go through quickly the have you ever sequence here. So we know apparently you do business things during the day.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a day gig.
Yeah. Okay. And do you like that?
No,
No.
I'll be on. I'm not I'm not doing what I really want to do yet.
Yeah.
Um, for the longest time, I worked for a technology company, and probably 6 years ago, I got laid off. It's just technology. There's this company buying that company, and this company buying this other company, and then they sell that company, and so on and so forth. So it was kind of one of those situations, and I just got caught up in the wave of company layoffs and got laid off, which was fine. And again, that story is too long to tell, but basically it was a 2-hour commute for me each way to work. So I was glad to be done with that. But then it took me a while, and the age discrimination in hiring people is alive and well in the Central Coast of California. So being a person of a certain age, it was difficult to find another job. So I ended up going to retail, and I worked for a big box company, Home Depot. So, and I work there now I work there as the customer service desk lead. So there's the supervisor, department supervisor for the service desk, and then me, and then we have a team of associates that are service desk associates that we deal with returns, we deal with orders, people picking up orders, people placing orders, um, answering everybody's question under the sun, all that kind of stuff. So it's, and of course, Home Depot's open 7 days a week. They understand what I do as a square dance caller. And as time has gone on, they've been really understanding about needing time off to do that. And, scheduling, I do my best to limit my weekend gigs to twice a month, so that there's 2 months or 2 weeks there in the month that I can work weekends for them. They depend on me a lot. Just, I don't know. You've all been to retail stores. The the, the and I don't want to generalize, but the people that they hire. So when they get somebody who's kind of good at his job, and uh, they dump a lot of extra stuff on you, and I'll just say that. And it's not really where I want to be. When I was off between jobs and I was looking for work, I actually went back to school and got my real estate license. And that was what, 2019, when I got my real estate license. I That happened in July, and in August of 2019 is when I got hired by Home Depot. So I kind of put it on the back burner for a bit. But in January of 2020, um, I kind of started up. I got connected with a friend who was a broker, and I want to say it was either 2020 or 20, right as COVID hit, right in the middle of COVID, I got my first client as a real estate client. And I it was a challenging experience, especially with COVID on top of it, and um working working full time, because Home Depot was open during COVID and all the restrictions when it comes to showing houses. But I got really good at writing real estate offers. I think I wrote 18 for that client. And because of the fluctuation of real estate prices at that time, and people having tons and tons and tons of cash to buy property, she got outbid every time. And finally, after the 18th one, she's like, you know what, I'm gonna kind of put this on hold, because I don't think this is gonna work out. So yeah, I kind of get it. And we were kind of coming out of COVID, and I'm like, all right, we're starting to hold in-person real estate associate. I belong to the Pismo Coast Realtors Association. Started going to that in person. Unfortunately, my broker was not local. He had a California license and was from the Central Coast area, but had since moved to Las Vegas. So a lot of our training consisted of phone calls back and forth once a week, going over stuff. It was a great training experience. But in January of this year, he retired from doing real estate, which kind of left me. So which means he left the association and the state association as far as membership goes. And if he's not a member of the local association, then I can't join the local association, which means I have no access to the MLS. But you don't really need the MLS, because Zillow and Realtor.com has come a long way. But you still need that local affiliation to really do anything. So then started having some health issues at the beginning of this year, and kind of focused on that. And now those health issues, I hope, are behind me, and I'm okay. Now I got to find a new broker and go through the whole interview process and set that up. So that's really where my heart is at. Besides the cardiologist's office, my heart is kind of in real estate right now. So that's where I'm headed, to kind of free up a little more of my time.
Oh yeah.
That was kind of a long way around. So yeah.
Wow.
So I'm a busy guy.
Yes.
So
Yes. Well, there's always something to do. Always an adventure. Um, Hopefully, everybody is setting their goals and not reaching their goals, but branching out and finding new things along the way, which is cool. So, have you ever ridden a motorcycle?
I have, yes. Two-wheel and three-wheel
Oh, yeah. Okay. Very
when I
good.
was younger.
Yeah. Ever jump out of an airplane?
No. My dad has. I watched him do it. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that.
Okay. Have you flown in a hot air balloon?
No, not yet. I think it'd be fun. Maybe.
It is. It is. It's a totally different sensation. Have you scuba dived?
In a swimming pool, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, that's okay. That's still diving. Have you worked in a factory?
No,
Okay. Have you ever pulled taffy?
no. I've eaten it, but never pulled it.
Okay. Have you ever ridden a horse?
Not really. I bet I probably did when I was a kid. I seem to have a vague recollection of that, but like nothing. But that might have been connected to one of those merry-go-round things, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
So not really. No,
Okay. Um, have you ever wished you were taller or shorter?
no.
No.
I'm what, 5'11"? I'm good with my height.
That's good. Um, do you play an instrument yourself?
I do. I play guitar.
Okay.
When I was in elementary school, I started playing the trumpet and I played the trumpet all the way through high school and was in the marching band.
Oh, very good.
So
That was my first major. So
nice.
I have to say, very good. Of course, they always said the line was for the daughters. So don't let your daughter date a trumpet player. I never could figure that one out. We were nice people.
Yeah, we were. We still are.
Well, I don't know. Have you ever done karaoke?
Yeah. I did it at the Tropicana Hotel one night in Las Vegas. I
Oh,
mean, I've done
nice.
it more times, but that was like the biggest
Wow.
place I've done karaoke. So,
Yeah, yeah. You
yeah.
want to do that again, Brian? Just a second. Do that again, Brian. There we go. Yeah, yes, Brian. For those that weren't on earlier, Brian was he's still recovering from being a participant in the Canadian karaoke contest, which at some point we'll let Brian tell us about that, the event eventually. Uh, okay, Judy must have left and she's coming back in. Okay, okay, well that's good on the jumped or have you ever's in the last. Okay, we did miss a lot of. We're going to have to book you back again, Darren, because there's a bunch of things, questions we want to ask you from the other side of the mic. We got part of the mostly the square dance side, which is good.
Hmm.
But just quickly, how do you de-stress?
Wow, that's a good question. I, I was going to say I eat. No. Um, I I like to watch TV. I'm kind of a fan of Turner Classic Movies,
Oh yeah,
movies from like the 40s. 30s, 40s, 50s. Um, Model trains, it's kind of another um, side hobby I have.
Do you have a setup?
Um, no, I don't.
No.
But we have a good friend who's a dancer that actually has a model train set up. He has a basically has it in has a whole room, and I can go over there and run my trains on his setup, and we talk about it. Yesterday we went to the Santa Maria Valley Railroad, Friends of the Santa Maria Valley Railroad. We belong to that organization. Had a barbecue, got to see some displays. It's a little I wouldn't say it's little, but it's a local uh crane, like freight operation in the local area. So we got to ride the train, like on a real train,
Mm-hmm.
down the
Oh,
down the track and back. So yeah,
oh, that's
that's
cool.
and doing nothing. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's like my, the line about my wife said, what are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." She said, "Oh, you didn't do anything yesterday." I said, "Well, I wasn't finished." So
uh,
anyhow, is there anything that you're afraid of?
um, two things: fear of the unknown. That is like my biggest fear. That just drives me insane. The fear of the unknown. Um, and snakes. I can do without snakes. Any kind of snakes.
Okay.
So
So if you get
that
a
was a good
clogged,
question.
if you get a clogged drain, it's going to stay clogged. Plumber can't bring a snake in and snake out your drains, eh?
That kind of snake is all right.
That okay? I knew we could. We get right to the kernel here. We you know we don't let anything escape us. So if you could be remembered for anything at all, at, you know, supposing you're
Oh wow.
at day's end and you're being called up yonder or wherever people go, and what is it you want to be remembered for?
I'm laughing at the chat. There's
Yeah,
a there's a model railroad on Facebook Marketplace. Thank you, Michael, for letting.
yeah, I see that.
Down for it,
If I
okay? I'll
could
be
be,
a million.
I think I'd want to be remembered as um just I think as a good person with a kind heart that's willing to help people out. And I think that's why I got into square dancing, you know, just
Even
to
as a kid, yeah.
yeah, just to help people out, just to
Wow.
help them achieve their dreams. Or maybe get away from reality for a little. Let me help you get away from reality for a little bit. Come square dance.
Well, that's good. It sort of lines up with
Yeah.
what Michael suggested. Maybe being remembered for saving square dancing during COVID, because
Yeah.
we didn't even touch on your Zoom
No.
coverage and everything. I mean, Darren has been doing Zoom calling and continues with Tom to have an active program continually, which it, there's that goal thing. It branched out of necessity. We had to do something, and wow, a whole
Yeah.
nother activity, really.
It yeah, it was. And there are other people that are still doing it. And
Oh yeah.
so yeah, because I only feel like we hit on like the early days. Like I never told you about the I didn't get to tell some of the stories about Gary Shoemake being on the roof of my house or or learning actually learned advanced dancing in my dining room, dancing to tapes of Kip Garvey and how he used to fly to our house. Well, yeah, there's a lot more stories to share. So, oh, we ought to do
Okay.
this again.
Well, we
Do
will.
the second half of my square dance
I
life.
think that'd be a great idea. Possibly in October, we've got a couple of dates. November's pretty open.
We'll do part two. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a that's the thing when you've been doing this so long, you got so many stories to tell
Well,
and
if you've
things you've
been
done.
interesting, yes. And it's there are so many people to bounce things off of. All you have to do is be receptive, and the stories happen. They happen to you. That's great. Yeah, we might spend a year. It's like the song. What was the song that the guy sang about? Oh, let's have an after party. And one of the lines of the after party is, and of course the audience goes yay and boo. And one of the lines is, we'll have a bar in the after party hall, and everybody goes yay. And the guy says, the bar will be 1 foot wide, and they go boo. He said, and 52 feet long. Yay! So maybe we could do the same sort of a thing with the callers we have on from this year, and kind of do a part two for
Yeah.
the next year. So
Yeah.
there's a few other folks that are doing podcasts and interviews with callers, which is good. I like doing it on Zoom because we get to, well, for one thing, we all get to touch bases again, and that's where we're at in the program now. You didn't even have a chance to do any commercials. Halfway through, we like to do commercials. That's okay.
Yeah, I just mentioned our Beach Bash festival. It's a 1 day festival that we do in January. Um, there used to be a big Winterfest festival, and again, way back in the day, my family was involved in Winterfest before it became the Winterfest that everybody knows it today. That again, a whole nother story for part two. But anyways, Winter they ended up not going forward with Winterfest a few years ago, and there was a lot of people that felt like we still needed a January festival to take its place, and so we started right before COVID and we did it, and it seemed to be popular. And so after COVID came, we held our first post-COVID beach bash festival this year. It was me and Buddy Weaver and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the round dance skewer. Oh, Phil and Sue Harris. How could I forget them? Phil and Sue Harris. And it's basically a full day of square dancing. Uh, um, I got their stories to tell about that too, and about let's have a hey, a few of us want to get together the night before Friday night for dinner. How many have we got? 78 people for dinner. Crap. So, but anyway, so we're learning. But full day of dancing. We're doing it again next year. In January 20th, Mike Seastrom and I will be the callers. Dan and Allison Drumheller from Northern California will be the round dance skewers. We're looking forward to that. It's going to be a great time. So beachbash805.com is the web address. So, and I can't forget that. And here's another topic we're going to have to discuss, Joe, and part two is our connection still to Cal Poly University, but the Cal Poly Line Dance Club has a square dance component to it as well. So we've got college kids that dance with us throughout the school year, square dance with us. they're going to be providing the line dancing for there's a line dancing segment at our Beach Bash festival too. So Cal Poly's there doing that, and they square dance, and the whole story behind that and how that got started, that's for part 2. So
Okay.
I hope somebody's taking notes to
Yes.
remember what we got to talk about, because there's tons of stuff with that.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
but anywho's
we'll have
okay.
to set up an agenda sort of a thing. So let's open it up to the folks here who might have a question for you of their own. Yeah, just kind of raise your hand or speak out.
Anybody got questions?
Yeah, when's the
Bueller?
when again are we dancing to you over Zoom, because we haven't had you for the past few Thursdays. Hint, hint, hint. Even with your schedule, hint, hint, hint.
Well, this coming Thursday, right? I believe.
Oh.
I specifically scheduled this Thursday off to do the Zoom dancing. So this Thursday evening, 7 o'clock Pacific time is our next Zoom dance when I'll be calling. So yeah, good question.
And thank you, Darren, for doing the Zoom calling. You were one of the first callers that I connected with, and I started with you. And it was really nice to have the caller dancing and calling at the same time, because you appreciate how difficult it really is.
Absolutely. Thanks, Liz.
I thank you and Tom so much. And you are doing a service to Zoom.
Thank you. Yeah.
Don't forget it.
That was a smart move on our part to do that, and we're happy to do it. And I'm glad you're here today. Actually, I'm glad. I want to make sure that I thank everybody for coming today. Wow, this has been really, really cool to see everybody, and from actually all over the world. So, wow. So nice.
Anybody else? It could be a question, or it could be especially in embarrassing stories. You know, they're great. Like I remember when.
When are we going to figure out how Magic Underpants came about? Is that part 2, or is that part 3, or is that at the bar late in the evening?
That will be the X-rated version.
Oh, good.
That'll be subscription. Yeah, subscription
How that
only.
came about. Yeah. And again, how I got involved in the IAGSDC, the International Association of Gay Square Dance Clubs. That's for part 2. And
okay.
There's stories behind that too. I've led a colorful life, man, I'll tell you. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question.
Joe, can I just? Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Let's let Will go first, okay, Eileen?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Will.
Are you able to sleep well on the night after you call, like a club night?
Most of the time, I sleep pretty well. Why are you having? I've been watching your live posts on Facebook, and God love you for keeping square dancing going over there in Hawaii. Thank you.
Whether it goes well or whether it goes badly, I always have a rough night sleeping afterwards. I want to know if that was a caller thing or just me. Okay, thank you.
It might be a caller thing. Might be a little of both. A little of you and a caller thing.
Well, don't expect to go to sleep right away.
Yeah.
No, it's a good 2-3 hours later.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
then it's all night. It's just like I get to sleep, and a little bit later I'm awake and not getting to sleep and have to read or something, and all night long like that.
Wow.
Yeah. I think that's.
And I sleep beautifully any other time. I can fall asleep, working a jackhammer.
Nice.
And do you work a jackhammer?
No, computer programmer.
Oh, same thing.
Eileen, what's your question?
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Eileen.
I also joined Darren and Tom on the Zoom, but I won't be there this week. I'm going to be traveling. But I wanted to ask Darren. He didn't say anything about calling overseas, or has he done calling overseas, or is he only in America?
Oh, that's a good question. Growing up, I haven't done any, like, I have not physically been in the overseas to call. Um, I did spend a year in London as a kid. I think I was 6 years old, and my parents took us to London for a year. My dad went on sabbatical and studied at London University, I believe, for a year. And I lived in London, went to school over there, went to Broadfield's infant school. I was probably first grade, I guess. I learned to ride a bike in London. So yeah, but I have not yet anyway. So um, the farthest overseas that I've called is Hawaii.
Perhaps,
So
You've called.
perhaps you have to add that to your dream list.
yeah, well, and that's true too, Tom. I have called in Canada internationally, and I have called in Mexico. Well, it was Mexican waters because we were on a boat, so a ship. So, but yeah.
Anybody else?
Really, Michael? Did you email him? Oh, Lord.
I have no
Anywho.
shame. Darren knows that.
Okay.
I've
Alrighty.
always
Well,
wondered where he wound up, you know.
well, we'll have to have y'all signing back in for part 2 with Darren.
I will let you know.
Yeah, we'll put it on the schedule and whatnot. Now we're going to be off for a couple of weeks on on here, so when we come back in September, we'll have Steve Cotman, a name that you all probably recognize pretty well. Jeff Priest from Ontario, Canada.
I know that name.
No, you know, when we talk about parents being the instigators of square dancing, you know, Cotman's a family name. Jeff, his family of the priests, they were known as the priesthood, and they very very heavily involved in square dancing. And then I think it's the 24th. Where is that? The last one in September is Doran McBroom. Okay,
All right.
and then we're going to have in October we're going to have Hannah, who's on my screen, always upper left-hand corner.
Nice.
So and perhaps Lars will contribute a little bit of you know helping her remember stories and whatever. And that's as far as we'll take it for now. Anyhow, I want to thank everybody for showing up. And if you have any questions, any comments, or whatever, go ahead and add them into my email. We have here in Canada, we're, the first weekend in September, we're doing the Alberta Provincial Convention. That's always a nice one. But the big one is next year, July 24 in 2024. Yeah, I see Michael has signed up for it. That's good. Our Canadian National Convention, and that's right here in Calgary. So, and if you want a really good spot, let me know. I'm the program chairman, so I'll be setting it all up. it actually everybody gets equal treatment. We don't care if you're a kid. If you're listed as a caller, you'll get, if there's 100 calling spots, and there's 100 callers, everybody gets one. So it's we've got a lot. Oh, there's just so much stuff out here in Alberta. I've only been here 3 years, but it's just a fantastic geographical area. A lot of history, and it's gorgeous. So if you come out,
Nice.
you come out a week ahead of time for the Calgary Stampede. That's a world famous thing. Then Banff and Jasper over into the BC area. I mean, there is the oldest dinosaurs. I don't know. I don't know if we've given ages to these dinosaurs or not, but Drumheller is where they discovered the biggest amount of dinosaur bones ever, I guess. There's a big museum there. So, anyhow, you can go online, just Google Canadian Convention 2024, and all the information will be there. If you're thinking of signing up to come, do it soon, because the hotel room is pretty well almost full. And we're starting to have a look at other hotels to put people up at. They're not that far away, but it helps to get registered early enough. And also, we have a 750 max cap, which we probably then will shut down the registrations. So, sure like to see you all there. Okay, so thanks, Darren and Tom, so much for
Thank you,
coming
Joe.
on. And
Thanks for having us. This has been really fun, and thank you for everybody coming. It's
that's great.
good to see you all. Yeah.
Well, we're going to do a part 2, definitely. That's for sure.
Okay. Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye now.
everybody.